Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Quober, and today it is time to bring back Jordan Foltz. And we are going to have a nice discussion about our thoughts, our minds, culture, and the real possibility that everything will be meshed up into one culture, no matter where you are from. So, Jordan has a wonderful YouTube channel. Please subscribe and watch his videos. The subscription alone will not cut it. And so I'm very happy to have him back, Jordan. Welcome.
Thanks. It's good to talk to you. Good to see you again. Happy spring.
So, Jordan, as I said, we have wild times. How is it? Are you still locked down? Are you in? What's going on in your place?
I stopped paying attention. I stopped paying attention to what the what monarch king governor is saying in our state of North Carolina. Everybody's still wearing masks. I haven't heard anything about a mask mandate being lifted. So to the extent that mask mandates still exist and retail and hospitality institutions are still forced into a fraction of their capacity as they normally would be. So there's still like the big hand of Big Brother crippling business and mask mandates. So observably speaking, when you're out in the world, there's still that great scar on social interaction and people's souls shining through. But compared to, I think, places in California, Southern California in the Bay Area or New York City, it's really nothing. And a lot of states around me. So I live in the South, right? But I'm at the top of the South, and North Carolina has a lot of progressive communities, a lot of university towns, a lot of like Raleigh-Durham Research Triangle. There's a lot of progressive thought here, which in my view has become synonymous with authoritarian thought. And so as far as being a state in the South, we're more authoritarian than, say, Georgia or South Carolina or Florida. Florida's really done a lot better. The governor of Florida seems to have opened things back up, in Texas as well, which is nice. So, the hope that I see is that at the very least, we might get some political, even if it's not a full rebellion or full independent thought from these governors, at least we'll see enough of a fealty or allegiance to voters' will to veer from the orthodoxy of more control and more authority is better. And I think we might just end up with a patchwork in the U.S. for the next couple of years of who's open and who's closed. And North Carolina is probably going to be somewhere in the middle because we're like a 50-50 state. Our state legislature is red, very conservative, and then the governor himself is kind of a progressive, and that's just kind of what we have going on right now. We've been focusing on our homestead and our family, and trying to find people who value sovereignty and who see the truth in individual sovereignty and who are willing to take risks and be courageous to preserve that and pursue that in their lives and for themselves. And so me and my wife and my family, we've been trying to connect with other people with the understanding that the future is such that likely the institutions that we've relied on for decades and 100 years, public schools, retail shopping, various licenses from the state to do a particular thing, are going to be prohibitive to people who exercise and believe in sovereignty. So we're working on setting up childcare preschool networks, friend groups that have similar values, so that we're not always at odds with somebody or potentially going to cross paths with a statologist fascist who's going to call authorities for having gatherings of 10 or more or whatever. So it's been a productive year and couple of months and kind of a winter of hibernation of creation, but also there's been a lot of destruction too, as there has been for everybody. So
yeah, here in Europe it's rumbling. It's really interesting right now. In Brussels, the court has ruled that the government has 30 days to repeal all corona measures.
Amen.
Because they have no legal framework, meaning either you come up with a valid legal framework or you have to repeal everything.
Wow. Well, bless the courts for that.
Yeah. And in Austria, what came up, also a court ruling, and they blatantly said, and we have this, Germany and Austria, we have, yeah, the same measures. Yeah,
Okay.
there's no difference. And so they said that this is not going to work, and that the entire measures hinge on the PCR test, and that the PCR test is not for diagnostics, which is true. Carrie Mullis, the one who invented it, said it many, many times. He was the one who got a Nobel Prize in chemistry for that.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, so there the court also said enough.
That's a beautiful thing. I hope that that stands. Obviously, there's lots of people who have been tripping on this power and so inflamed in their diabolical nature through this arbitrary power that they've had, that they haven't earned, that nobody. I mean, I guess we give it to them by consent and by not protesting against it. The silence is consent, you know, some people say. But executive powers going against legislative norms of permanent kingships and queenships is absurd. So I'm glad that the courts are having some courage and standing up, and I hope that it's not just a formality to try to win people's trust. That will be somehow they'll rescind. That would be my concern, is that it's just kind of a signal to kind of win people's trust back in institutions when it's probably fading, and they'll come up with some reason to back off if the numbers go up again, or the numbers go up again of COVID. But let's hope that stands, and that these executive powers stand down. I don't think we're seeing that type of court integrity or interference, or like yeah, I guess I'll just say interference with the executive process in this country. You're seeing more of a fragmentation of executive powers, but in the governorships. And, you know, you had, again, I'm not watching a lot of news from the right or the left or the independent or anything. It's too crazy. I mean, I know what's going on. I get it. I don't need to follow it to the T all the time, but I did see this clip of Joe Biden the other day, just like begging governors to be obedient to him. Just like, please don't open back up. Please keep your face mask mandates in place. Please, blah, blah, blah. And I just don't think he has the respect to the people by and large. And so there's this kind of desperation.
Did you have a look at the White House YouTube channel?
No, I haven't seen it once since he's been in power. No.
It's very interesting. It's, I would say, 95% thumbs down. The comments are disabled anyhow.
Okay.
And the number of views has decreased immensely.
Sure.
That was funny to see.
Well, seeing that kind of thing just really reinforces for me. Look, I mean, there's all kinds of evidence, and we don't need to go revisit this because we talked about last time that the election was fraudulent. But sorry, I'm going to get your show canceled. You can delete that if you want. But just talking to people and seeing those just obvious indicators that this is a very unpopular administration, and that people do not approve of these kinds of measures and this sort of authoritarian mentality. A lot of people don't. At least the types of people accessing their information through alternative channels do not. That it just doesn't add up that this is the most popular president and everybody loves him and everybody's on board, which is the propaganda that the media is peddling. But yeah, no, I'm not seeing the court systems interfere in the way that I think would be expected, or honestly mandated by their responsibility to uphold the Constitution and the rights of individuals in this country. State Supreme Courts should be interfering and putting governors in their place right and left. It's been a year now. It was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? And that was the line that they used. and we're in a situation of semi-permanent monarchy, which is not the representative republic that we claim to have, and that the United States uses as a apologetic for our or as an excuse for or legitimize uses to legitimate our policing of the rest of the world. We're a democracy. We do things better than you. Therefore, we should have control over your country. It's not happening here at all. So that whole excuse is obviously being proven bogus. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time, we also have a lot of other things going on. I find these times extremely exhausting.
Yes.
Because it seems that on all levels, there is a slight, yeah, let's put it friendly, a slight attack.
Exactly.
So, you see that?
I did see that headline somewhere and I see it right now. Yep.
Yeah. And Jordan, that is one of those headlines where I have to say, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry.
Look at these people. They present themselves as such innocent, like cardigan, sweater wearing, nice people. It's such a front. They're wolves.
Yeah.
They've got a finger in every institution of power. I mean, they sponsor news organizations. It's such a farce to see an organization like CNN interviewing Bill Gates about COVID policy. Like, look at our premiere interview with Bill Gates about what we should do about COVID policy. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you interviewing Bill Gates, about COVID policy? This is absurd. Anyway, carry on.
So, math is racist. Wrong answers are white supremacy. That hurts.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you are correctly wired, then that hurts. Because what that implies is that you cannot know something for sure. Yeah.
Not only that, here's the hypocrisy in this. I mean, there's so much hypocrisy in it. But when you see this type of propaganda, wrong answers are white supremacy. So that implies that right answers are primarily the ones that are given by white people. This type of thinking that's being perpetuated is inherently the racist type of thinking, because it's operating on the premise that non-white people are the ones that are going to be failing or getting answers wrong. That's their premise, not the opposition's premise. They're basically saying math is racist because white people are likely to get it right and non-white people are likely to get it wrong. That's a very racist type perspective to have. And yet they're the ones pretending to be pedagogical about teaching others to be anti-racist. It's absurd. But yeah, and then the objective truth piece is crazy too. I can't believe that any kind of educated person could read this kind of stuff and not immediately have an alarm bell go off that this is a complete
He's grabbing for the vomit bucket.
Yeah. Well, it's a complete fulfillment of any dystopian projection that Orwell had. 2 + 2 = 5, right? At the end of 1984, the whole thing was to scare somebody out of their wits, so to authoritatively claim that lies were truth and truth were lies. And that's exactly what this is. You're right. It's going for the jugular vein of existence. It's not just about a technicality at this point.
Yeah. And another thing here, a quick way to dismantle the white supremacist culture, according to the text, is to eliminate order in the classroom. The text argues requiring students to raise their hand before speaking can reinforce paternalism and power hoarding, in addition to breaking the process of thinking, learning, and communicating. Have you ever heard such bullshit?
It's complete bullshit. It flows out of this type of thinking that refuses to acknowledge that there is a truth that we must apply ourselves to learn about, and that there is some directionality and purpose to life. It's seeking to level everything out so that we pander to the children and the uneducated and those who know nothing as that like the directionality should be downward toward the common denominator rather than something that we build up and invite people toward for their own self-actualization and development. Truth is a threat to this type of thinking because it's hierarchical, right? I mean, you can have something wrong and then you got to relearn it. You got to improve yourself and get it right. And they don't like that. That's anti-equity.
Yeah. And here we have, to be an anti-racist math teacher, admit your racism. This is implying that every person, just because you're white, you're automatically a racist. And that is a racist statement, boys and girls, in case that slipped by you.
Exactly. Right. So it's going both ways. I mean, this is entirely racist thinking. It's racist toward white people, right? To say, you know, because you're white, you are inherently racist, and it's racist toward Black or other people of color, because it's presuming that they are the ones that are going to underachieve in these subjects, and that therefore all standards must be abolished for their benefit. To me, they're both pernicious ways of thinking, and to not see through it, and I mean, really just tar and feather these people is crazy. Again, it's fine if they want to propagandize, but they have so much power that they can actually implement this kind of programming in the public schools through their foundations and nonprofit philanthropic efforts, you know?
Yeah. And here he says it very well here in this paragraph. Ironically, the text itself is wildly racist. It treats all minority students as somehow inferior to white students, claiming they are not capable of understanding the correct way to learn math. Yeah, exactly what you said.
Yeah, he said it much clearer. Exactly right. I cannot believe that people don't see that. It's just the patronizing attitude that's developing among so many people in the West. It's just so sickening. It's just, and it's so hypocritical to what they claim to be trying to actuate, which is, well, maybe it's not hypocritical to what they claim to be actuating, but they front an attitude or a conscience that cares about people's well-being and empowerment. But the system of thinking is about breaking down all access to empowerment, because it's about breaking down competence, capability, and the path to power. The only path to power is self-improvement, self-application, competence, learning new things, failure. And this seeks to do away with all of that and just meet everything where it's at.
Yeah. So
oh, here we go. You got another one here. All right. Wow.
Yeah, I told you.
This is Yahoo Life, huh? Okay. Wow.
Yeah, Yahoo Life. Whiteness is a public health crisis. It shortens life expectancies. It pollutes air. It constricts equilibrium. It devastates forests. It melts ice caps. It sparks and funds wars. It flattens dialects. It infests consciousness, and it kills people. White people and people who are not white, my mom included. There will be people who die in 2050 because of white supremacy-induced decisions from 1850.
I don't know what to say. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like, you know, it's just such drivel. It's just,
yeah, it's such bullshit. I'm just mum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here that article from before with mathematics, you know, it is simply not true that mathematics itself is a white thing. You know, the Persians added
Exactly.
to mathematics. The
Exactly.
in India added to it.
Yep.
So saying that that is a white thing is so it's
Ignorant.
not true.
Completely ignorant to history, just like you said.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the Greeks did a lot in mathematics,
Yeah.
but they probably inherited a lot from the Akkadians and the Sumerians, right? And then when the Greeks lost it, the Arabs carried it through, and the Persians, like you said, to what we have today. It's an absurd notion that relies on superstitious belief systems of people that are completely ignorant to historical continuum. It's a farce. The fact that that could be taught in a university classroom, which I know it is a complete debasing of any value that somebody could get at a university these days. I've got 3 daughters. I do not plan to send any of them to the university. It's just if that's
Yeah.
if that's what they're like, what of value can they possibly gain with an institution that puts that front and center as kind of like the connective tissue of all of their departments?
Do you think there are still universities, institutions that are not going down that road, where maybe the real rich people are sending their kids to?
I think that the real rich, I could be wrong, but I think the real rich people are still trying to get the stamp from the Ivy Leagues. They're
Okay.
still trying to do Yale, Harvard, Oxford, Cornell, Columbia, and those schools are very much at the vanguard of this type of propaganda. I think that the gender studies divisions or departments of the Ivy League schools are producing the goalposts of contemporary cultural discourse, and
Yeah.
they're largely responsible for this level of bullshit. This is not a ground up phenomenon. This is a developed ideological programming from the Ivy Leagues. And I mean, judging by high up politicians and people of power, I think the Ivy Leagues are still where people are seeking to go. Whether or not the really uber rich are employing this type of thinking or taking it to heart is another matter. They may see through it for the programming bullshit.
Yeah, I think
That
sometimes I think that, that is for the peasants. We will feed them that.
Yeah. Yep.
And here, talking about feeding, chest feeding people is the new gender inclusive term in UK hospitals.
Because the men, you got to consider the men who are breastfeeding their babies, Judith.
Yeah.
All those men who are breastfeeding don't have breasts, so we need to be gender inclusive. It's another interesting one that I heard from a British, I don't even know what she was, author of some kind, gender studies author the other day, was in Britain in custody courts, or family courts, they don't call it child custody, they call it child access, because they don't want to presume that the parent is an actual guardian to the child. It's just a matter of, it's almost like the child is state property and the state's granting different levels of access to each parent. It's amazing.
Yeah, to a certain degree, that has always been the case. Otherwise, they couldn't come in and take your children away. You know what I mean?
Well, they couldn't for a long, I mean, when do you think that was instituted? I mean, the Department of Social Services, that was probably the progressive era in the US, the 1920s and 30s, I would guess.
Yeah.
Maybe even later, the 1960s. I doubt they've been taking kids away for very long, 50 years, 60 years.
Yeah. And, but now it is, even with the language, it is out in the open. So what do you think? Because my feeling is if you manipulate and attack the language itself, you are basically laying the groundwork for a new culture, something that has been unprecedented up to that point.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a new approach. I think that it is. I mean, I think power-hungry individuals and groups of individuals have familiarized themselves throughout time on ways to manipulate culture and manipulate populaces, whether it be divide and rule, or false wars or false flags to initiate a war to gain wealth or something like that. But I think a lot of this level of mind technology and working on kind of the psycho-spiritual fabric of individuals and society as a whole is probably a result of technologies that have been around since World War II, and
Mm.
CIA and MI6 and Mossad type experimentations to see what they're able to accomplish when it comes to mass manipulation. Yeah, I think that the goal is a monoculture, and I think that it's quite possible that certain people who would be participating in this level of, or at least consciously participating in this level of manipulation, could convince themselves that they're doing good with the logical scheme of, well, diverse peoples means they're always going to fight. We can't have people disagreeing. The only way to get to a unified organism of humanity is to eliminate all disagreement, to eliminate all diversity of thought, and eliminate all diversity of consciousness. And the only way to do that is to break things down to their most common denominator. And I think that's part of this. However, I think that's at least part of the rhetoric of it. But obviously, the outcome and the methods are to divide people further based on otherwise superficial and inconsequential characteristics like your race. Like, who cares? Like, there's racists out there. Yes, there's racists out there who we just read an article from a couple of them. There's that kind of racist, and then there are more traditional, white supremacist racists out there. But I think most people today are moving through that and don't consider themselves superior based on something as insignificant as your race. But these types of efforts are looking to sustain that. Some people think it's just to capture voting audiences. Some people think it's just like, so in the United States, they just see it as an age-old democratic tactic to get people to think there's a large piece of the population against them, so that they vote for the party that claims to protect them from this illusory population. So make white supremacy seem like it's the biggest boogeyman that's ever existed. Like the KKK is lingering around every corner as a fear tactic to encourage all minority populations to vote Democrat. And it's pretty successful, so that could be a big part of it too. But I mean, I think it's a lot deeper than that. It's on every level, like you said.
Yeah. This one I find a little bit amusing. Montana senator complains local meth producers can't compete with Mexican imports.
Good for him. That is funny. I mean, humor's like the only way to deal with this stuff, right? Just like meet them on their own territory and like speak to it as though you're speaking authentically and exposing it for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can have a listen.
The flood of Mexican meth, Mexican heroin, Mexican fentanyl. 20 years ago in Montana, meth was homemade. It was homegrown. And it had purity levels less than 30%. Today, the meth that's getting into Montana is Mexican cartel. The flood of Mexican meth, Mexican heroin.
Yeah, that was it. And then it starts again. Isn't that funny?
It is funny. I don't know if he's trying to be funny. If he is, he's doing well. He's doing well at covering up the irony and sounding sincere.
Yeah. I thought that was, that was one of my highlights when I read that a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I think that, comedy bursts through this stuff so effectively. And I think more comedians are getting emboldened to make fun of this. And I think that that'll be really effective. One of the benefits of this becoming so uniformly fascistic and contrived and pushed and forced on us is that it's almost like, and I wasn't really an adult, you would probably know better than me, and I don't know if this was the case in Germany, but in the 80s, you had this situation with the moral majority in the US where Christian conservatives had a lot of political power. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, they used that power to try to legislate those values pretty strictly on the public. And it kind of gave rise to this punk rock movement as a countercultural movement. And what we're seeing all this shit is the reason that it's so abrasive to people like us is because it's a cult religious system ultimately. Like that's what it is, and it's a cult of religious zealots who are foisting their religious system through political fiat onto people. And I think that it's having the result of giving rise and giving birth to a healthy new counterculture of people who see, like you and me, who say this is total bullshit and are making fun of it. And we'll create new outlets, hopefully, to express that. The stakes are higher than ever, but I do think that that's what's happening.
Yeah. And what you said, protecting minorities from other people because they are demonized as dangerous, and for minorities, you know, instead of aiming for a culture that only knows one thought and one accepted attitude, you could teach people how to discuss, how to have maybe a wild but a passionate open discourse. Yeah, there is no need to tell somebody, of course, if you go into yelling and name calling, then that is usually the end of the conversation. But if you teach people how to do that in a way that everybody can go out of it and does not feel like a worm afterwards, yeah, that would be the better idea, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I think even, I don't know. I haven't lived in another era where I was name called in an argument, but I tend to think, you know, when you read like historical, when you read historical nonfiction, like autobiographical accounts of different centuries and Renaissance era or something like that, and you read how the author describes things like conflicts or getting in a conflict with somebody. There's a lot of pride that's on the line with someone's identity and belief system, particularly when it comes to like religious ideology and stuff like that. But there's a lot of life that they seem to get out of an argument as well. And there's a threshold that they understand you can't cross. Like as soon as somebody does make it super ad hominem, like insulting your whole lineage or your mother or your sister or something like that, it's like a duel, and they just have it out and it's over. But there's some kind of purity in it when where they're bringing their truth to the table and in an impassioned way. Yeah, I think what you're describing is a society that values diversity, and we're not. That's the irony of the diversity, equity, and inclusion misnomer. They say this is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not. It's just about equity. It's just about. It's not about diversity at all. They do not accept diversity, and they certainly
and
don't
control.
accept. It's about control. That's it.
Yeah. So here we have a lovely one. Father arrested after continuing to call his child she, after court-ordered gender transition treatments.
Yeah, I read this one actually. This one really affected me pretty deeply because I've got 3 daughters, and to think, and I've got an ex, the mom of one of them, who it's not a very good relationship. And I was thinking about it from his perspective of raising this beautiful little child, giving everything you have, and then having this fissure in parenting where the other parent is now claiming that she's a boy and encouraging that in her, rather than saying, okay, you feel that way and let's wait till you're 18 to like figure this out, but supporting her, whatever. And then having the actual government take away your parenting rights, hold you behind bars while they're injecting your child with chemicals and hormones. And that's what's being propositioned as the right, just thing to do. And then you're the one that's being propositioned as the wrong and the evil one. It's just, I mean, this is, to me, so painful to even conceive of. I can't imagine what this man's dealing with right now. And bless his daughter for whatever she's dealing with too. It's unfortunate that a 14-year-old would be able to do this. I don't know the particular situation. I don't. Maybe she genuinely got gender dysphoria and she's always going to have it. And maybe something of this nature will be helpful. I don't think it hardly ever is, though, statistically.
Yeah. The fact is your DNA determines what gender you are.
Correct.
And you can have 100,000 operations.
Yeah.
You will still be a man.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's just a true fact.
Or a woman.
Yes.
Yeah. And if people want to do that, yeah, and they're adults, they really know what they are in for.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care. But can we please leave the children alone?
Exactly. Exactly. And better yet, yeah, let's leave the children alone. And to legally impugn a man, a father who's invested his life in raising his daughter, for simply referring to her as his daughter, that this wouldn't get everybody in the world's attention who has children is mind-blowing to me. Well, you have to go to more obscure sites to find this story. This is not a reported story.
No,
no,
of course not.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, here I have this is one again where I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. I usually go for the laugh.
Go for it, Baroness Jones.
Yeah. Curfew for all men to lessen discrimination.
I don't even know what she's talking about. I can't keep up with these people anymore.
Yeah.
You want to play it? Let's hear what she has to say.
Yeah, wait. No, there is, I guess there is nothing to play, but the safety of women in British streets has recently been brought to the fore by the murder of Sarah Everett. The 33-year-old disappeared on a nighttime walk through London, and a serving member of the Metropolitan Police has been charged with her murder. So, and now this woman demands that all men should be under curfew after 6. Let's see if that plays. Yeah.
Having a defense available to householders defending themselves, but not to women in abusive relationships. Defending themselves against someone they know can be dangerous and violent towards them is discriminatory. And in the week that the woman, Sarah Everard, was abducted and we suppose killed because remains have been found in a woodland in Kent, I would argue that at the next opportunity for any bill that's appropriate, I might actually put in an amendment to create a curfew for men on the streets after 6 p.m, which I feel would make women a lot safer. And discrimination of all kinds would be lessened.
Yeah, so now you know what you are in for, yeah?
Well, definitely, yeah. By choosing half the population based on their gender,
sorry.
And putting an arbitrary curfew on them, we're going to lessen discrimination. That's the height of doublespeak. That's very good.
Yeah.
She looks like a very joyful person, by the way. She's got like a permanent frown glued on her physiognomy. It's just, I mean,
you know, humanity survived for thousands and thousands of years without putting men under curfew. because they are so dangerous.
Look, men are dangerous. Like everybody's dangerous. That's why we have to educate ourselves and improve who we are. We've all got a dangerous person inside. We've all got a monster inside.
Yeah.
You know? But it's not because of our gender or skin color or whatever. Yeah. It's on every individual to confront the monster that's in them and take responsibility for it and keep it from hurting other people.
Yeah.
You know? I
Yeah.
mean,
Exactly. Do things like that happen? Yes, but that is, I don't even know what to say. Is it insanity, psychopathy? Is I don't know. Oh,
well,
this one is California's proposed ethnic studies curriculum urges students to chant to Aztec deity of human sacrifice. Isn't that nice?
very nice. That's great. You know, all of this stuff, what is this, you say? You know, like it's a cult religious system. I think it is a sense of psychopathy. But when you're able to point to so many different examples on every strata of the human experience, from psychological to spiritual to educational to political, every aspect of our conception of reality being basically turned on its head, not just assaulted, not just like technically altered or infringed upon, literally we're being presented with inversions of the entire directionality of our lives. Rather than aiming up towards self-actualization through strength, courage, and the other virtues, we're being asked to aim downward toward equity through cowardice, fear, weakness, dependency, and all of the things that throughout time we have striven to grow out of as we become adults. I think that it's a satanic situation, Judith, quite frankly. The more that I see this and the more that I meditate on it and think about it on a rational, logical level, all of these things point to a satanic interference, bringing people into a place where they're worshiping the opposite of that which is good and empowering. And this is another example of that, worshiping human child sacrifice gods.
Yeah.
You know?
And he says it here in the very first paragraph next, that Department of Education will vote on a new statewide ethnic studies curriculum that advocates for the decolonization of American society and elevates Aztec religious symbolism, all in the service of a left-wing political ideology. Yeah. Yeah. You know that, because to me this is very disturbing, that it has to be a deity that is attached to human sacrifice.
Exactly.
And thinking that that has no, because it says here, the new program called the Ethnic Studies seeks to extend the left's cultural dominance of California's public university system, 50 years in the making, to the state's entire primary and secondary education system, which consists of 10,000 public schools serving a total of 6 million students. So now, imagine 6 million students are chanting to a God that stands for human sacrifice. On an energetic level, there is a lot happening, what people probably don't realize.
Absolutely. I mean, again, this is the same group of people that constantly flips their lid and goes apoplectic when they think about somebody muttering the word God in a public institution at all.
Yeah.
Having God in the Constitution, having any Judeo-Christian remnants of anything in our public institutions, claiming that these are the same group that claims the separation of church and state means there can be no mention of God in any public school in the country, that's a violation of human rights. Here they are, literally foisting a religious ritual and mandating participation from the children, like you said. So the hypocrisy is, glaring and absurd. But beyond that, and more importantly, I think is your point, which is a mandated, I would call it satanic ritual, because I do think that gods of that nature that were requiring that, cross-culturally speaking, throughout time, were born of and appealing to the lower parts of our consciousness, and a type of mob psychology and superstition that I think humans carry within them, but that is evil. And you find it in Moloch in the Middle East. You find it in this particular god in Aztec culture. I think you find a lot of gods like this across the globe that are demanding this type of blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
Personally, I yeah, I think that it does speak to volumes on an energetic level, and I think that there's something that's being accomplished through it.
The ultimate goal is to decolonize American society and establish a new regime of counter-genocide and counter-hegemony, which will displace white Christian culture. Yeah, white Christian culture. So the Baptists, then that would okay if they are predominantly made up by black people. Is that okay then?
No, they'll find a way.
Then is Christianity okay, or is it?
That, I mean,
It's unbelievable.
I think that what we'll see, I really do believe this, Judith, in the next 10 years will be a continual progression. What this all is about a rebellion against that which is. It's a rebellion against truth, right?
Yeah.
It's I call it a satanic impulse. When you read literature, when you read mythology about Satan, about Lucifer was devoted to God. Lucifer was not going to bow down to the creation of God. Lucifer was all about self-importance. So Lucifer rebelled and said, I'm going to mess with all of this creation, try to bring it, dilute it into going down the wrong path of venerating me for no other reason than I'm saying I'm important, not because I've created anything of consequence, anything beautiful. And in order to do that, or that whole system is basically saying that which is creation, God, is an infringement on my freedom. My freedom relies on the degree to which I rebel against that which is, versus the opposite, which is how we've lived for millennia, which is my freedom relies on me living into the divine reality that's before me and learning the rules thereof. And so when you say man is woman, woman is man, good is bad, bad is good, Christ is bad, Satan is good, there's no end to it when you're rebelling against that which is. And I think what we'll see in the next decade will be, with this whole ideology and curriculum, a more explicit veneration of specifically Satan. I think that we'll get more, I think we'll start to see Satanism, de facto Satanism, incorporated into religious studies and as under the brand of inclusivity and diversity. And we'll start to see more of these kinds of things where it's not necessarily this Aztec god, it would be Satan proper. Let's explore Satanism from a non-exclusive Christian-centric perspective of, inquiry. And I think also we'll start to see things like acceptance of pedophilia and acceptance of criminal behavior.
Oh yeah.
On and even a celebration of more and more criminal behavior of like, oh, they're the victims of a system that says their behavior is bad. Maybe their behavior isn't bad. Maybe it's just an expression of diversity or who they are or what they experienced as a kid. I think we'll see that for sure over the next 10 years, and pedophilia and things like that becoming protected classes.
Yeah, not only that, my hunch is we will see public human sacrifices and the people will cheer.
In the next 10 years, you think? When do you think that'll come along?
I'm not putting a timestamp on that one because actually I was a little bit shocked how quickly they convinced everybody that because you are alive and you are breathing, you are a threat to others. Yeah. So that took them like what? A couple of weeks?
Yes.
And
I think that it had been accomplished long before that. I mean, if you think about, so within the first couple of weeks, here's an interesting thing that I noticed. Within the first couple of weeks of COVID, and I might have mentioned this when we spoke last fall, there were at least 4 people that I crossed paths with, friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, who came over to who I crossed paths with for one reason or the other, who said, the world's overpopulated. I think we could use a culling. I think it's okay and we can use a culling. So the seeds of misanthropy, or, you know, human hating and worry about there not being enough to go around, were planted well before COVID. So that by the time there was this pandemic and people were being presented as a threat, like you're talking about, there was already a sentiment in the hearts of very, very many people, propaganda addicted people around the world, who were ready to take joy in the idea of people dying and think that it was good for the earth. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, we are still in it, the season of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It ends on May 1st. And when it started, you had that shooting in, not the one from yesterday, the one from, there was where was that shooting? Was
Colorado, the supermarket thing?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So it's always funny when you type that in and you Google it, season of sacrifice, and then you look what time Oklahoma City, for instance, took place during that time. And yes, you're right. Their twisted idea is that the earth needs human blood to replenish and to sustain life, which is total bullshit. The earth does not need that. But that is their belief structure and they will act on it.
Tell me more about the season of sacrifice. I've not heard of that. What is it traced to?
What do you say?
What is it traced back to as far as
yeah, that is
pagan thing?
You know, I guess oh no, not the movie.
God.
Yeah, you know, sometimes there's always a movie for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 40-day season of sacrifice.
Okay.
Yeah, some say it starts on 19th of March. Others say it starts 22nd of March. I will not quarrel about that. It ends on 1st of May. And these bloodlines, these people who believe the earth needs human blood to replenish and to sustain life, they would say it's the old religion. Yeah. And I guess most people do not really know what that is, but it has to do a lot with blood sacrifices.
Okay.
And yeah, there is, let's see, can we, false flags are about to begin. Yeah, but interesting, a lot of, yeah, unfortunately, they do not They do not go into it, but there are websites. They are showing you all the events that. And the thing is, if during that time you are at the wrong time in the wrong place, your life will be affected by it, no matter if you believe in their nonsense or not. Yeah. Yeah. And occult holidays and Sabbaths. Yeah, that is all intertwined, all of it. And these are what I would say the bloodline families. When I my interviews with Gary Wayne, he always connects them back to the Nephilim.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a big influence on me since I saw your first interview with him. I bought his book, made it about halfway through. I'll finish it someday. It's very dense.
Yeah. The last 300 pages are only footnotes.
Okay. Yeah. It's dense though.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So.
What the fuck? California study. What in the hell? The National Pulse.
Study. Yeah.
There you go.
But Jordan, so dear Jordan, as you know, starting from next week, you have to be home at 6 p.m. You know that, yeah?
Oh yeah, I'll do my duty as a good citizen to protect others.
Yeah, please. I don't want you running around in the streets after 6, maybe molesting women and yeah.
I probably, that's, if I'm out in the streets past 6, I have no control over myself. So
you please you come in early and
well, I listen to the scientists, Judith. So,
exactly.
I trust science and I believe science. So if you can find a scientist to tell me to do that, I will do it without asking any questions.
Good boy.
Just show me a scientist somewhere to tell me what to do.
It almost has a feeling of a new religion.
It is absolutely a new religion. It is. The state is at the Godhead. And I was noticing this too. I was listening to, this is very interesting because you get this breakdown of the left and the right? And a lot of the times I talk smack about the left because they're worse these days than the right, in my opinion. But we have this news channel. It's like local, more straight down the middle news. They tend to be a little bit more level-headed about stuff. But they were talking about COVID passports, and the guy had an expert of some kind on to talk about COVID passports, and they were going over the pros and cons of them, right? And so when they were going over the cons, you can get a lot about when they're saying they're going over the pros and cons. You get an idea of what goalposts they're setting up, which are arbitrary and kind of fallacious goalposts. But the cons had to do with security of your health information to potential hackers and potential people who would exploit it, or other countries or something like that. The nefarious entities that were named that could access your information and possibly compromise your situation through it, none of which they talked about were the government. That was like off limits, So in all of these mainstream conversations, you can, when you're evaluating a particular authoritarian system like a COVID passport, you're allowed to discuss the potential negative aspects of it, but you're not allowed to say, what if an authoritarian, nefarious government got in control and used all of your information to control you and render you a slave? Not in those terms. You're not even allowed to go near that. You're not even allowed to suggest the idea as a potential criteria of a con for this system that the government itself, or an individual in the government, or a government institution might misuse it for their own empowerment. And so that it's such a false set of goalposts that are set up even with a lot of more independent news media. When they're discussing these things, they will never put on the table, what if the government itself is bad or does something bad here? It's always like, what if somebody pirates the information and does something bad with it? I'm not really as concerned about that at all. But what it signifies is that the government's off limits to criticize. The government institution is the Godhead. It is a religion. You cannot question the potential beneficence or goodness of the government, because the government is the Godhead of the religious system that they're participating in. And if they were to question the government, they'd be questioning the entire system, because it's based on that being the ultimate good. I mean, I call it statolatry. It's a form of fascism. It's statolatry that we're seeing. The state is the Godhead, and if you criticize the state, you are de facto a right-wing conspiracy theorist, and you're thrown to the curb.
Yeah, we already know what you are.
I'm gonna get a big T-shirt that just says right-wing conspiracy theorist. Just like, let me just say it before you do. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm very delighted that you will go along and stay away from the streets after 6 p.m. Then I love it that you're cooperative. And just to let you know, I also made an appointment with a doctor so that you get some female hormones, because Jordan, we want to keep you safe.
Well, here's the thing, female hormones yield good moral traits and characteristics, and male hormones yield evil and bad traits and characteristics. So it's very convenient, because we don't have to apply ourselves in any particular way anymore. All we have to do is trust that femaleness is good and maleness is bad and whiteness is bad. It just simplifies everything. I mean, it was so complicated before, where you had to like judge somebody based on the conduct of their character, and all the minutia thereof. It's like, this system's just so much more effective. Like, oh, that guy's white, put him in jail, or that guy's a man, he's out after 6, that's bad. But yeah, I'm glad that I'll have these injections too, and I'll certainly respect the 6 p.m. curfew, because everybody knows women are completely incapable of taking care of themselves after 6. So we need, they're very weak creatures.
Yeah, 5:45, totally different story.
God.
And there never has been a molestation when it was daylight.
No. And there's never been a COVID case passed before whatever the next curfew is either. It's very scientific. That's why I respect science, and I listen to the scientists.
Yeah, good for you.
What's the case here anyway? Did you read the case of female hormones to treat COVID? Is it because
because females do not get it that often, the doctor said. And so he was overwhelmed that the majority of his patients were male.
Oh, interesting.
And so now he thought it would be a good idea to inject you with female hormones.
Cool. They'll probably do that before too long.
Yeah, and you can probably then sing in the women's choir afterwards.
That would be great. That would be great. I've wanted to shed this darn gravelly voice for a long time. It's a nuisance. Very scary.
Yeah, this is what you have already touched upon. How conspiracy theorizing may soon get you labeled a domestic terrorist. So my problem with that entire idea is if you're starting to feel like forces controlling the governments of the West are out to get you, then it is likely that you are either a paranoid nut job or a stubborn realist.
Nice.
Either way, it means that you have some major problems on your hands.
Yes, that's awesome. Yep.
If you don't happen to find yourself among the tinfoil hat wearing strata of conspiracy theorists waiting in a bunker for aliens to either strike down or save society from the shape-shifting lizard people, but are rather contemplating how in the 1960s a shadow government took control of society over the dead bodies of many assassinated patriots, then certain conclusions tend to arise.
Exactly. Exactly. Well
And
done.
the thing is, so let's say I'm aware of the fact that certain individuals, they pump in huge sums of money into certain research, into certain groups. Is it really that outlandish to think that those groups who receive that money will dance after that person's tune?
Exactly. That's a completely, that's just logical, coherent thinking. That's what I would call non-superstitious thinking.
Yeah.
I think superstitious thinking is when you observe and admit such realities and maintain this hope that that's not the case, just based on the fact that you don't want to believe that it's the case for no reason, not based on any logic.
But as we see here in this article, oh, Nancy Pelosi, she's always good for a laugh.
Have you seen the meme of her face in the sunshine in the Teletubbies cartoon saying, "Good morning, Sunday morning. Good morning, Sunday morning." Have you seen that meme?
No, sorry.
It's very funny.
Yeah, yeah. Even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage and control the flow of information. I would say yes.
It would be silly to think that there could possibly be such a thematic narrative as you've already demonstrated with these articles that we're all subjected to constantly without a centralized hand of control on all of it.
Yeah,
You'd have to be very unimaginative about reality to think that that would be an organic phenomenon, rather than a controlled phenomenon.
Yeah. How is it in the United States? Here in Germany, all people that are questioning the government right now in this specific situation that we are all in, they right away they are neo-Nazis.
Okay, I think that yeah, it's very quick that you become a neo-Nazi here too. I think maybe not as quick as Germany. Like I said, right-wing conspiracy theory. Right-wing is first. Right-wing conspiracy theorist. Right-wing or conspiracy theorist will be first. And if you're dealing with any kind of social commentary specifically, white supremacist is pretty close, which might as well be the same as a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist, right?
Yeah.
Either way, the terms are designed to scare people away from thinking because nobody wants to be called those things, because nobody wants to be those things. No critically minded, conscientious person.
Now that you're saying that, I actually forgot to pull it up, but that reminds me of an article by the New York Times. And in that article, they blatantly said, critical thinking is the problem of society.
That's awesome.
The article was titled, "Don't Go Down That Rabbit Hole," or something like that. So I thought, oh my goodness. So now it's even problematic to have, of course, if you want to control everybody, if you have a society, a group of people that can think independently, they are a threat. And what I find interesting here, already a 60-day review of the US military is underway to purge the armed forces of all such thought criminals, while McCarthyite legislation has been drafted to cleanse all government jobs of conspiracy theorists. That is straight out of 1984.
Sure. Uniformity. Yeah. There cannot be any room for the individual in any of this line of thinking. The idea is, you hear a lot of people say, you have to do this for the collective good. You have to subject your individual liberty for the collective good. Don't be so selfish about asserting the importance of individual sovereignty. And under this way of thinking, what that means is ultimately there's no room for the individual at all. Because there's no such thing as the collective good. The collective good is whatever somebody in power says the collective good is. And they're able to demonstrate with this line of thinking that anybody who's an individual or pursuing an individual line of thinking is a threat to some kind of homogeneous collective reality that doesn't exist. If you're forcing people into a collective good, then you're de facto going to be compromising somebody's sovereignty. You're going to be compromising and taking away what somebody out there thinks is good for themselves. And so when you create a collectivist mentality of it's only about the collective good, there is no individual good, then you basically have a system where there is no individual. There is no individual good. Everybody has to cow down and compromise themselves to this idea of what the authorities say the collective good is, and that's what this would be on a government level. You know, if you have a value for sovereignty or critical thought or independent logic or any principles other that are outside of the cult itself, you have to be eliminated. You have to. What they want is allegiance, right? Allegiance and obedience and uniformity. Unity, they'll call it. We need to be unified. But what that means is uniformity.
So, government might ban conspiracy theorizing. You cannot ban the thoughts. That will be funny to see how you manage to do that. Government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. Yeah. Government might itself engage in counter-speech, marshalling arguments to discredit conspiracy theories. Government might formally hire credible private parties to engage in counter-speech. Government might engage in informal communication with such parties, encouraging them to help. And that is not surprising, because here they talk about, where is he?
What is he reading from here? This is
this is off Guardian. The website, you mean?
Yeah, who's he quoting as? What I'm wondering. Sunstein. Who's this Sunstein?
Yeah, Sunstein was under Obama, and he was the one who came up with so-called sock puppets, meaning there were groups of people sitting there, sometimes military, and they made up accounts on social media and what have you, and then they were aggressively always arguing against those people who said something critical about Obama's moves and so on and so forth. But in reality, it was not that you really were interacting with a person that had that attitude. It was his job or her job.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable. Darwinian drives for sex, popularity, desire for conformity, desire for novelty, and greed. Yeah. Wow.
That's our lowest impulses.
Yeah.
right? The ones that traditional virtues are designed to get us through and above. Traditional virtues, discipline, hard work, courage, compassion, self-knowledge, um, helpfulness, all of these things that cultures have lived by forever are specifically designed to move the individual to have dominion over those things that were just listed. And the system that you were reading about was designed to exploit them and leverage them and maximize their domain on the individual and the populace.
Yeah.
Again, it's an inversion. It's an inversion of the directionality of what we're living for and how we should apply ourselves.
Yeah.
Satanic.
Yeah. And here, of course, this is very, very popular. Many people know about this. Coca-Cola asks its workers to be less white to fight racism. And they have, a course. The seminar entitled Facing Racism was presented through LinkedIn Education publicly, although not free of charge. The company admitted that in effect, it invited its workers to take the course, but they clarified that it was not mandatory. Yeah. To be less white, because that is always interesting, the definition. To be less white is to be less oppressive, to be less arrogant, to be less trusting, to be less defensive, to be less ignorant,
What?
to be more humble, to listen, to believe, break with apathy and break with white solidarity.
Okay, so we need to be less trusting, but we need to listen and believe.
Yeah.
You need to believe, but you need to be less trusting. So are we supposed to be more skeptical or more naively trusting and gullible? The focus on whiteness is very strange. It's starting to be it's starting to be very weird. I mean, it's always been it's been weird, but is it? I mean, at face value, you could presume that it's just a divide and rule kind of thing. It's designed to piss white people off, and then create a sort of superior, honestly, to create a superior complex in non-white people. As an excuse to mistreat white people and create and inflame divisions. It could be that, and to inflame divisions of or biases that in real white supremacists, because when a white supremacist sees this kind of stuff, obviously they're threatened from an identity standpoint, not from like an existential truth standpoint. Like you and me are looking at this like, this is bullshit. This is not good for anybody. This is breaking down the boundaries of truth. But you also get white identitarians who actually do believe that there's white supremacy, and they read this kind of stuff and they say, okay, it's time to go to war, so go to war against brown people, black people, brown people, minorities. And that might also be what this is designed to do. It's like a vicious cycle. If we can get the white supremacists all riled up, going to war and showing up more, being more aggressive, then it can prove our point, so that we can do more of it. Then they're riled up more and they show up more and people get more afraid of them and it becomes more legitimized. I don't know. But focusing on the whiteness is it's very strange, and associating these random arbitrary things that probably some college or maybe grad student wrote in one paper and have just proliferated beyond control, like a Pandora's box, are just absurd, oppressive, arrogant. It's oppressive to be white. I mean, does anybody see what's going on in China right now? Does anybody see what's going on in Saudi Arabia right now? Be less arrogant. Like, these are just human characteristics that happen when somebody's imbalanced.
Yeah.
How arbitrary is that to assign it to a color? It's just so unsophisticated. That's the other kind of like paradox here, is that this stuff is peddled as a sophisticated way of seeing the world and a sophisticated ideology, but it's the most crass and base, unsophisticated, ignorant drivel anybody could hope to espouse, and you get these like PhD, otherwise articulate people saying this drivel, which is nothingness, And it's like, this, you think you sound sophisticated saying this? And everybody claps like seals. Oh yeah, another person said be less white. Oh my God. Oh my God, how edgy. How progressive. Oh my God. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's amazing.
And here, another blanket statements, total bullshit. In the US and other Western nations, white people are socialized to feel that they are inherently superior because they are white. You know, I was raised in Germany after the Second World War. I can guarantee you that you did not grow up in that area feeling that you are inherently superior to anybody.
Absolutely not. No freaking way. And it's such a disservice, again, focusing on children, like bringing it back to children. Most kids, you put a black kid and a white kid together and go play in the sandbox or go play on the monkey bars or whatever, unless there's a overtly racist parent involved, which sometimes there is in very rare cases, they don't give, they could care less.
They don't give a rat's ass.
They give no rat's asses at all. And then
Yeah.
to try to teach them in institutions that they've been raised racist is such a confusing, abusive, psychologically abusive thing to force on people in the first place, but especially children, to introduce this drivel to them. It's just so sad when you can really appreciate the beauty of kids playing together and not caring about cultural, racial, linguistic, any of those differences. They don't care. They're an imagination funland. They want to create things together. It's an assault on innocence and childhood when they start to bring this into that realm, and they are starting to. You know, teach these things in children's books. Children's books are becoming more propagandistic. It's hard to find. I've got 3 daughters. 2 of them are toddlers. One of them's a teenager now, almost. But it's hard to find a good children's book anymore that's just a to the core hero's journey about individual self-actualization, confronting adventure, overcoming obstacles, and becoming stronger and more capable, and like getting a reward through that. That's like the traditional narrative. Everything now has some little propagandistic hook in it that's trying to teach them some social messaging along these lines. And it takes the magic out of it. It's so sad. I mean, the amount of children's books I got to bring to Goodwill because they're just propaganda bullshit. It's not even a good story. They are proliferating a lot.
Yeah. So, and this one, I just pulled it up to show it. It's really not only in the West here. This is Abu Dhabi, Mohammed bin Zayed University for Humanities launches world's first Bachelor of Tolerance and Coexistence.
Holy shit. Wow. Where's Mohammed bin Zayed University?
Abu Dhabi.
Oh man, wow. What are they going to do? So think about this. Not only is the degree absurd, what is somebody with a degree like this going to do? I can tell you, they're going to join any nonprofit organization that seeks to control other people. That's the only thing that you can do with this degree. You have no sense of skill or enterprise that's of any value to anybody. The only thing that you do with a degree like this is you join an institution that seeks to have power over other people and force them to do things according to your ideology.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. I see it all the time. Go into the
It says
middle.
here the degree aims to create graduates with a high level of academic knowledge and practical skills that enable them to spread a culture of tolerance and coexistence.
There you go.
It includes courses that promote these values inspired by the legacy of Sheikh Zayed, as well as covering the role of media in encouraging a cohesive society, comparative religion, and Islam.
There you go. So it's all about media. So teach them to be propagandists in the media and activists in nonprofit organizations. It's not about tolerance, I'll tell you that.
No.
A degree like this presumes, in order for a degree, you create a curriculum like this. You start hiring professors that constitute this curriculum. you start creating people whose economic and financial realities depend on the relevance of a curriculum like this, then you are de facto creating a situation in which people's very livelihoods rely on the continuation of the idea of intolerance. That's the problem with the nonprofit industrial complex. And I worked in that industrial complex for 4 years. It claims to solve all of these social ills. Same with government institutions and agencies, the EPA, the Department of Education, all of this conflated stuff. The people can't actually solve the issues they're claiming to address, or they would make themselves obsolete and they wouldn't be able to make a paycheck. So they have to continually invest in inflaming, or at least creating the illusion that the issues they're addressing are ever more inflamed than they've been before. That's why today, at least from an organic level, that's why today you get these ideas of white supremacy, racism, sexism in the headlines more than they've ever been, even though in reality they're more marginal issues than they've ever been, because an industrial complex has been created out of the issues. And you've got millions of people with worthless degrees doing nothing other than creating the illusion that they're worse than they've ever been, so they can keep getting a paycheck from their donors.
Yeah. It says here, it follows the United Nations Declaration of February 4th to be International Day of Human Fraternity. There you have it.
Sweet. Well, that's great. I'm glad we can get that over with on one day, because I just, on February 3rd and 5th, I'm just going to be very hateful toward humans. And then on the 4th, I'll be cool with other humans' existence. And then I'll go back to my hateful ways.
Yeah.
Thought every day was human
and
fraternity.
whenever I have to say, whenever I hear the word fraternity, I also sense some Freemasonry influence. The same was with the French Revolution, yeah, égalité, fraternité. Yeah. That revolution was for the fraternity. Yes, of course. Yeah, and human fraternity in recognition of the historic meeting between Pope Francis and Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed El-Taib, in Abu Dhabi on this date in 2019. During the meeting, the two religious leaders had signed the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Isn't that lovely?
That is so lovely. I'm glad they're educating us on these things. The average person definitely does not value peace and, human fraternity. It's not like those are innate things that almost every individual strives for. We need to be educated on it. We need to create institutions to reinforce it.
Yeah, we are too dumb to get along.
Yes, absolutely. And it's definitely not part of who we are to want to get along.
No, it has to be enforced.
I mean,
but only in one direction. And that is this doublespeak that you have mentioned. It's all about diversity. It's all about it's not.
No.
What on the surface, yes, but you scratch just a little bit, and what do you have? Yeah, you have a monoistic culture.
Yes, a monoculture everywhere.
Monoculture.
I mean, I don't travel. So you were just traveling the world, right? I mean, not long ago. I've traveled in my past, but it's been years. It's been 14 years since I went anywhere significantly different than the United States. And that's a long period of time. I mean, 14 years in today's years is like a lot can happen and a lot changes culturally in the world. But I would what I've noticed in the US at least is the differences in diversity between communities and between regions in the US gets more and more negligible and minute. It was like, so I live in the South. I said this before. Maybe it's still politically different a little bit, but you get less and less accents, Southern accents. You don't get the flavor of the region. You might as well not travel anywhere. I mean, the ecosystems change, which is nice to experience sometimes, but the cultures less and less and less. The downtown areas, the same stores, the same institutions, the same feel. the same cultures, the same values being peddled, the same conversations being had on any given street corner. The issues that people consider to be important and worthy of discussing are the same, and they very rarely have to do with the local situation on the ground in that particular community. So there's like a monoculture that's happening on a national level, but I think it's probably happening internationally too. I would imagine you noticed that in your world travel, up until recently, just seeing these diverse areas of the world all kind of come to some singularity point more and more as far as the culture.
We talked about that quite a bit. I remember one day we strolled through Cancun in Mexico, and I looked around and I said, you know what? Here, everywhere is the same shit. Doesn't matter if it's in Germany, the US, or here in Cancun now. Here you have Gap. Here you have whatever retail store. Yeah.
Yep.
The countries where it wasn't completely the same was, let's say, Kenya or Maldives. Yeah, Thailand, of course, you have the large corporations, but you still had these very, very private, tiny stores where you could buy really, let's say, extraordinary clothing or books or art or whatever that was not just made from one corporation or two or three or whatever. But other than that, that horrible. I don't enjoy that everything looks the same. Yeah. I walk around that area, and the only thing that reminds me, this is Mexico, is because there are palm trees.
Yes. And they're speaking Spanish primarily, I guess. Well, it sounds like you might actually genuinely value diversity, as do I. And I genuinely do. I think that diversity is a key component to a healthy web of life. Just like you see in the forest. If you try to monocrop the forest, it's not going to be healthy. It's the same with human cultures, I think, and allowing people to be diverse and to trade and learn from each other is how we improve. And to force monoculture on everybody, I think is going to breed disease, maybe whether it's physical disease or psychological disease or spiritual disease. I think the social engineering project is necessarily a pathological one, regardless of what you're trying to teach.
Yeah. I have on my Odyssey channel, I have one interview. There are certain things that I no longer publish on YouTube. Yeah. So I have one interview there with a lady, elderly lady from Israel, and she reported her point of view. And she said, because she survived as a little child the terror reign of Hitler and the Nazis. So, and she reminded everybody that how they did it in Germany. They started out with convincing the Germans that the Jews are spreader of disease.
Wow. Wow.
And she went on and on. It's really a great interview. It's Vera Sharaf. I can send you the link if you're interested. And she said that what is going on in Israel right now, here the one with the passport, here the other ones, there are people, elderly people, who said, I felt as if I'm in the selection again. And she said at the end of that interview, she said, I would have never thought that during my lifetime, I have to be afraid of the same people again. Not us Germans, but the people
Sure.
behind
The
that. Yeah.
fascists. It's an
Yeah.
idea. Yeah. Yeah. Not specific to a race or nationality, specific to a pathological ideology that's anti-human.
And that is how it started. And then there was a so-called T4 program here in Germany, where midwives, they reported infants that had a birth defect of some kind. And then first they started to eliminate those that had been reported by the midwives. And yeah, then they went on to the, yeah, let's say the mentally impaired people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then they got rid of them. And all that nonsense. And also this twisting of the language. For instance, they, when some babies had problems, they told them, yeah, we can give them to support. But what support meant was they were testing, they were testing on those infants. We give you oxygen, you will don't get anything, you will get a little bit less, you will get even lesser than that one. And a lot of them, of course, died there. And that is what they called support.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, unfortunately, I guess we haven't learned our lesson.
Well, I have a theory that, and I don't have any research, but it's just by observing the way that things have gone in the world. I think that what happened after World War II was that the system of fascism was adopted by the Allies that won, and that even though Hitler was overthrown and you know, the Nazis ostensibly or at least nominally by name were defeated, the fascist eugenicist systems that they were promoting were adopted and furthered in the systems that won the war, you know, by the US, Britain, and so that they can claim that they defeated fascism and Hitler, but that eugenicist, scientific, dehumanizing, inhuman ideology has continued in the same
Actually, that started in the UK and the US, eugenicists.
Eugenicists did, yeah, yeah.
They imported it exported it to Germany, and
Yeah.
Hitler, he went completely overboard.
Yeah. I don't know that I see the same level. Maybe there is. I don't actually know a whole lot about what Hitler really believed on the eugenics level, or how genuine he was in thinking he was creating a superior race or something like that, versus just taking power over somebody. But I don't see the same efforts, at least right now, towards genuine eugenics. Like, I don't think that we're going to see the authoritarian fascists that are in control genuinely scapegoat people who are truly sick for either incarceration or extermination or whatever like that. I think it's just going to be dissidents, and they'll be called sick. They'll like you said, they'll say in the propaganda that it's because they're sick or they're a potential spreader of disease. But I don't think that there's a genuine interest in eugenics in today's fascist system. I don't think they're trying to breed superior DNA. I think they're just trying to root out people who aren't going to conform. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay, I know what you mean, but this population reduction, no, it's against everybody. No more exceptions. And that is why I find it even more disturbing than this time in Germany.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think it's equally disturbing. That's a good point. So yeah, it's an illusion that by obeying the rules, you'll be spared. Eventually, the system will turn in on everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the dissidents first kind of a thing.
Yeah, this go along to get along, that might work for a while, but ultimately, no.
Well, and ultimately no, because you lose your soul while doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's this great quote by Marcus Aurelius that I have programmed into my phone as an alarm every day, just so I can read it every day and have it kind of ingrained into my mind. And what it says is, it can ruin your life only if it ruins your character. Otherwise, it can't harm you, inside or out, right? And so the idea is you can be abused, you can be enslaved, you can be tortured. If you maintain your character and your integrity and your soul, essentially, then you're getting through it okay. It's going to really suck, and it's going to be the most horrific thing. It could be the most horrific thing. But it's when you willingly hand over your conscience and your soul that you're truly lost, like lost eternally. And that's the sad part about the people that believe they can go along to get along, who have this false religious system of statolatry, where the state's at the top. That's a false god. That is a false god all day long. It is such a small tent that they're living under, and if they just pulled back the flap, they would see the stars and say, "Why the hell am I venerating this flap of burlap or canvas or whatever? I should be focusing on the stars and learning what this existence is all about, that this tent is a construct within." And the people who do sell their souls and then find that the system they've been devoting themselves to forsakes them, I can't imagine how lost and forsaken that really is. But that's a tragedy. That's a real tragedy.
Yeah.
That's what we've been focusing on, you know, in my family. Yeah.
Sorry, do you think that this woke, if I hear that word, woke, I cringe, not only because what it represents, because, and yes, that might have to do with the fact that this is not my mother tongue. But when I hear that word, it feels gooey, sticky, just, you know?
Yeah. Woke. Ooh. Yeah, it's
like woke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really don't like to use that word, but I think we are, if we are not actively, you know, holding against that, we are steering into a dystopian, woke nightmare.
Yeah, I think that, again, I don't know how much control people like you and I have over here's the interesting thing about people like you and I. We're not interested in controlling other people, and that's our disadvantage. And that's why systems get away from us, because we're not interested in enslaving people. We want people to be empowered, and we realize you can't be empowered but by your own volition and your own choice. And so it's not about convincing and controlling others. Folks on the other side think it's their duty to control and to manipulate into their own devices. But being as it is, that truly woke people, sorry to make you cringe there, I mean truly woke, people who are awake to the stars, is what I'm saying. People who are awake to God are not concerned with manipulating others. Society gets away from us. And that's the kind of the epic story throughout time, is that society gets away from, very often, the people who are most connected to the divine, connected to truth and devoted to it. And so the only option we have is to stay devoted to that truth, right? And I think that it can't be taken from us. We very well may lose society, and society may already be lost. Maybe it's been lost since way before we were born. You know, who knows what it could have been? Who knows, like, what society could have been as far as a reflection of truth and divine reality. Maybe it's just another phase in the lie and the illusion that is society, and there's still the option to devote and enslave oneself to that, to Moloch and whatever that Aztec god is, or to the true divine, you know, and truth.
Do you think there will be a splitting between the people?
Yes, I hope so. I really hope so. At this point, I think this whole idea of unity is, it's bullshit. We are unified in our value as individuals. Like nobody's better than anybody else, but there should be no expectation that we're unified in perspective or outcome or expression or anything like that. And it's a false narrative, and it's a false value system that presumes and teaches us that we should be, that there's something wrong if we're not. Let us be divided. I'm not saying to nuclear bomb each other, but let us be divided. And I think there's no other option. If seeing the way the powers that be have chosen their path, which is satanic lies, and I would rather there be a very clear divide between the people than to meet in the middle of unification, to like have a truce and say, okay, let's have half truth and half lies. I hope that we can have a Confederate type situation, at least for the interim period, where certain states or certain countries choose to allow individual sovereignty, and others might choose fascism. They obviously are and have chosen fascism. But again, sooner or later, there's going to be a showdown, because fascism is insatiable, and it knows its appetite is never quenched. And so even if there is a division for the interim period, which I hope one will manifest more and more in the coming year and years, the fascist denizens are sooner or later going to not accept the diversity again and want to come back over the top. So it's like an eternal battle. Maybe it has an end, maybe it doesn't. But I hope we get some division. I really do. And if we get that division, then there can be more bona fide institutions that maybe rise up within the geographic or political sectors that I might want to be a part of. New universities, new media systems, new art forms, new music, things that are independent of and do not care. Like the same way that a U.S. comedian or a U.S. political theorist really doesn't care what some guy from the Chinese Communist Party has to critique about his or her music or theory. In the same way, if we had a truly divided people, the free nations wouldn't really give a shit what the fascist people had to critique them about. And all this right-wing white supremacist bullcrap would just be like, I don't care. You guys are the dorks. You guys are the losers. Leave us alone.
Yeah, exactly. So, John, I thank you so much for coming on again.
Yeah.
And please remember, that today after 6 p.m., please,
I won't.
You stay inside,
I will not go out, and it's for the respect of the female.
And you should also write down your neighbors, the ones that do, and report them.
Absolutely. I want to be good. Thank you, Judith. It's good to see you and good to talk to you as well.
Yeah. So, guys, that was it. Night flight for today with a wonderful Jordan Foltz. And did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. My boy has a tizzy with a girl. Okay, good. So this was it, Night flight for today. Until next time. Stay safe and sound. Bye-bye.